Well, you're going to dig deeper into what's happening at the NGX and see what's driving price movement, the momentum, and we have Onose Asotie Naolo, Senior Investment Analyst, Main Street Capital. Good afternoon, Onose. It's good to have you.
Hi, well, thanks for having me.
Hi, Onose, what are stocks that are moving the market at intraday? We're causing this price action we're seeing and sustaining the 118,000 points we hit on Friday.
Well, today, like most days, so far in this rally, it's been banking stocks and some consumer goods stocks. We're seeing Zenith Bank, um, one of the highest volume and value stocks being traded. We're also seeing Access Bank, same with volume and value. Okomo Oil, surprisingly, not surprisingly, because they had a really positive Q1 result. Okomo Oil right now is on full bid. And, we're also seeing some interest in Nigerian breweries, right now in the intraday.
Honestly, today, so just look at well, we can't help but talk about the geopolitical tensions, what's happening in the Middle East, how that trickles down, impacts markets in Africa, especially Nigeria. What are the implications, and what are you seeing for markets? How does that either benefit or how does that impact the markets as we speak?
Well, so looking at the what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz, we're already seeing some impact. The first one is, so I'm going to talk about like capital market and stocks, and then I'm going to talk about just the general economic markets. So we're looking at Dangote refinery, right? And we already saw situations where on Friday Dangote increased the ex-depot price, of oil from 825 naira to about 880 naira, and that's because Dangote is we have seen an increasing reliance on oil imports from the US. I mean, Dangote plans to import about 17.65 million barrels this year, and it has already imported about 3.65 million barrels, over the last 2 months. Now, if we're seeing a growing reliance on imported oil, from Dangote refinery, then it stands to reason that oil prices will go, PMS prices will continue to increase. And then if the tension or the what's going on in the Middle East continues to escalate, if Iran actually goes ahead to block the Strait of Hormuz, and the US retaliates, and then there's going to be a higher premium on oil, and oil prices go up, it means the cost of Dangote refinery, Dangote's input costs go up, and cost of PMS, that we have to pay goes up. If that happens, you look at the energy sub index. Last inflation that came out last week, was it 2 weeks ago? Energy sub index was lower, which was a good thing. We saw in core inflation, being significantly lower or trending downwards, even month on month, which was good. If this happens, we're going to have a situation where that trend is reversed, and we're seeing higher core inflation month on month. We're already seeing higher farm produce inflation month on month, so we might now see inflation start to, stop the disinflation trend we saw for the last 2 months. So that's on the economic side. On the stock market side, companies that are in the oil exploration, the upstream sectors that sell, crude oil should do well. Seplat, Owando, and Aradel are three companies that immediately come to mind. I know that for Aradel, their full year Q4, the full year 2024 result was really positive. I know they increased their outputs to about 50,000 barrels per day, and they sold at an average price of $82 per barrel. Now, for this year so far, oil has not been near that price. So you see that Arado's price hasn't really been, really good this year, because people are thinking, okay, if the average price that they sell the oil is not going to be as high, then their margins might not be as good this year. But if we now have a situation where oil price begins to rise in the international markets, then their margins begin to widen. And the same thing with Seplat too, is I think at about $100,000 barrels per day production. And even you have even Owando, which recently got the refinancing from Afrexim to get to 100,000 barrels per day. So these companies that sell oil, the more oil prices increase, the more their margins increase, and we should now see some more interest in them. And we even saw that last week with some increases in Seplat being up about 7 to 8%, and Ardell as well.
So are we not seeing other sectors in the market going to benefit from these tensions? Because definitely oil and gas, we've seen Seplat, Owando, you mentioned benefiting, but we did hear that analysts talk about prices, oil prices going to come down to about 65 naira. That this current price we're seeing is just, the tensions that is driving the prices up, and so it's not sustainable. Do you see other sectors taking advantage of maybe lower oil prices and the tensions to actually strengthen themselves in the market?
Um, well, maybe logistic companies, right? Because I think they can be a bit more consumer facing, and if they are consumer facing, they could easily pass off the cost, you know, to consumers, but aside that, and maybe shipping companies, right? Companies that are into shipping, because if there is an increased premium, it's really easy to slightly increase your margins if the prices of everything is really going up. You know, but for at the top of my head, apart from logistics, really logistic companies that have to do specifically with fuel and oil, I don't really see any other company or industry that benefits, because every other for most other industries, oil is an input cost. So if the input cost goes up and you can't really pass on, the corresponding increase to consumers, then you're gonna have to, like,
And
take the
the
hit,
banking
for your
sector now,
margin.
we see them bouncing very quickly from that CBN regulatory forbearance we saw last week. We did see that drop off like hot potatoes for banking stocks, and then we saw bargain hunting investors picking them up very quickly. That was a very quick rebound, don't you think?
Yeah, we love banks in Nigeria. That's the truth. And so the market doesn't like insecurity, right? Or instability. And so when that came out, it was a shock, and the market was shocked, right? But the truth remains that if for a lot of banks, their interest incomes are up,
Okay.
even in Q1,
Onase,
and
Onase, could you hold your thoughts? We just want to quickly go over to make a quick announcement to our DSTV viewers. Aladi, I'll let you to that.
Yeah, so definitely we're joining, that's for DSTV viewers, the launch of the Renewed Hope Mechanization Program. That's a live coverage there. If you're watching this on other platforms, you can continue, but that's for our DSTV viewers right there. And definitely, Will, I'm really following this conversation, right now. Just trying to know the good spots where investors
you
can
can put
pile
your
funds
money.
with what we're seeing, playing out
Truly,
right now.
what sectors we're going to benefit apart from oil and gas that we can tap into? And you talked about logistics, but not a lot of shipping companies are listed on the NGX. We do know NACO,
Exactly.
that's freight company, but not a lot of logistics company that would benefit from this are listed. So I'm wondering how investors are going to tap into it if we don't have them as listed companies. So
Right.
maybe it's something the NGX should look into to get in more companies from that sector and for that industry, and not just wait for the high flyers, the big ticket guys from oil and gas, banking, and then leaving the other sides that actually benefit investors.
Right.
So honestly, I was just speaking about it. I know that we did interrupt you for a bit there. You just pick up on your thoughts and let us know what you think about the banking stocks, as you were saying. But just to throw it in there, we think the NGX. What do you think the NGX should be? Maybe when you're done with what you're saying, what do you think the NGX should do about listing companies in the shipping industry, in the shipping sector, to help investors, but participate and profit from any gains that we could get from there, especially now that they're the ones right in the middle of this whole tension.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me just the banking and then the shipping thing. All right. So for the banks, a lot of their interest earnings are going up, and they're seeing strong profit year on year. So when you had a situation where that was a shock, the forbearance announcement was a shock. But when banks came out to say, okay, look, we are not going to stop dividend payments, we should, with Access Bank, or Access Bank, Zenith Bank, and even First Bank, putting out statements saying, look, one saying by June 30th, we should exit forbearance, or forbearance shouldn't, go past this year. That in itself is enough to kind of dissuade investors, or to kind of calm the jittery sentiments down, because underlying these companies are strong companies fundamentally. So once we can get some sort of assurance, that this is not going to really impact their earnings, then there isn't a reason why we should buy. And for a lot of investors, they took those public announcements as, okay, the bank is aware, they are in talks with their counterparties, they're in talks with regulators, and they are doing something about these loans. And that is enough for investors. And investors are, look, no problem. We just need to know that you're doing something about it, you're aware, and it's not going to affect your normal core operations, and that's fine. And that's what we see in the market right now. So
It's
for
just surprised.
logistics and shipping companies,
Okay.
well, yeah. So the NGX, well, I think the NGX can do a couple of things to make the market a bit more attractive. Number one is the depth of markets. I remember, was it Legend Internet that launched on the market several weeks ago, and for a while we saw a hike in their stock price. But then after a while, I believe that was when investors were able to really start to sell their stocks. We saw a crash. And that's one thing we see on the market, that I see on the market, because I'm in the market every day, where you might be up maybe 10, 20% on a particular position. And if a general consensus is reached that, okay, that current price is a bit too high, there's literally no liquidity on the market. Like right now, if I wanted to buy Okomo oil because I think Okomo is good, I can't buy Okomo oil because there are no offers. Nobody is selling. And until somebody sells, you can't buy. So situations like this might dissuade companies from really wanting to participate in the market. Because unless you are a really huge company, and there aren't so many companies that can come in and immediately have the type of liquidity that a Zenith Bank or an Access Bank or a GT might have, you might run into certain problems with your stocks, your stock prices. And while you might say, okay, the stock prices may or may not reflect the current intrinsic value of the company in the short term, it does affect investor sentiment in a lot of cases. Especially if you are just, as a company, you are just coming in. You might come in at a valuation that people might think might be a bit too high, and then for the next 12 months, your stock prices are low. And so that has happened quite a bit. And so it's that's just one of the issues that we have, with the NGX. And then even access to the NGX. I mean, there are like brokers and brokerage companies, but a lot of retailing, a lot of domestic volume comes from institutions, not even retail. So you are in a market where it's really dominated by institutions. So if you now have a situation where a lot of analysts are coming to the same sort of conclusions, you see that's why you now see some stocks get skewed. That tends to happen. Stocks get skewed into either to the buy side or to the sell side, where you see it's all bids or all offers, because you have situations where analysts tend to come to the same conclusions, and then you see the same set of sort of moves being replicated in the market. And that's not really so great for market depth and market health. So these are some of the things that companies might look at and say, okay, if we don't have to raise
Okay.
funds through equity, we'd rather just stay out and just do our thing.
Well, we just hope that the regulators look into this and ensure that the atmosphere, environment, business environment is right for investment, and then the laws are not too rigid for them to be able to come into play in the market as well. Thank you so much, Onose Asotie Naolo, Senior Investment Analyst, Main Street Capital, for sharing your thoughts on Business Incorporated.
Thanks for having me.